I was in Tokyo last month, staying at one of those sleek, mid-range hotels in Chiyoda. It was 2 a.m., and I realized I'd left my laptop sitting on a table in the lobby.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
It is. In almost any other megacity in the world, that's a lost cause, a $1,000 mistake. But when I stepped out of the elevator, the lobby was silent and completely empty.
No one there.
No security guards, no night porter, just the soft, rhythmic hum of a sleek white cleaning robot circling the furniture. My laptop was exactly where I'd left it. Not a soul had touched it.
Wow.
It's that legendary Japanese high-trust atmosphere, the kind where 5-year-olds take the subway alone and lost wallets are returned with every yen intact. It feels like a utopia, but there's a strange, sterile tension underneath it all. The next morning, I was grabbing a coffee with a local tech consultant, and the wait was nearly 20 minutes because there was only one person working the entire floor. I gestured to the line and asked him the obvious question. Why not just open the doors? There are millions of young people globally who would kill for these jobs. Why struggle with a labor shortage when the rest of the world is willing to move here?
And what did he say?
He didn't give me a lecture on economics or birth rates. Instead, he just pointed out the window at a group of school children walking home without an adult in sight. If we import the world's labor, he said quietly, we import the world's friction. A robot can learn to clean a floor, but it doesn't need to learn our silent rules to keep the streets safe. We would rather be a smaller, older Japan than a vibrant country we no longer recognize.
That is a really powerful statement.
That conversation haunted me. It revealed that Japan's refusal to embrace mass immigration isn't a policy failure or sign of stubbornness. It is a deliberate civilizational audit. They have looked at the social fragmentation in London, Paris, and New York and made a radical choice. They would rather age in silence than thrive in chaos.
Right.
But as the government tightens the 1.23 million limit on foreign workers and doubles down on Buddhist robots and AI, a terrifying question emerges. Can a nation actually automate its soul, or is this noble isolation just a polite way of choosing extinction?
That framing, the choice between automating the soul and choosing extinction, that really gets to the heart of what we are examining here. I mean, the materials we've gathered suggest that Japan is engaged in a conscious socioeconomic experiment.
It really is.
It's a nation prioritizing cultural preservation and social order over the traditional neoliberal necessity for GDP-driven population growth.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what we're looking at is a radical living experiment. It's a society that has explicitly prioritized internal stability, cultural preservation over the endless frenetic chase for exponential economic growth. That's the mission of this deep dive. The evidence truly suggests Japan has managed to decouple a high quality of life from perpetual GDP expansion, a feat most G7 nations would consider an immediate recipe for collapse.
And to really understand how they attempt this seemingly impossible strategy, we need to introduce the 3 core pillars that underpin the current Japanese project, what we're calling the graceful decay model. First, we have to explore the economic reality of degrowth and how stability is maintained without systemic collapse, which conventional Western economics warns should be impossible.
Right.
Second, we'll look at the unique sociological foundations of its social cohesion and trust, the critical difference between the tension you might feel in a high-density Western city and that profound silent order you just described in Tokyo.
And the third.
And third, we have to analyze how their deep cultural dedication, specifically the shokunin ethos of craftsmanship, is being leveraged through technological autonomy, particularly robotics and AI, as a deliberate substitute for human labor.
So let's start with the inescapable demographic cliff. This is really the starting gun for this entire experiment. Japan is the global harbinger state. They've already transitioned into what is classified as a super aging society. This isn't just an abstract concern, it's a profound structural reality.
The statistics are truly startling. And it's not just their sheer scale, but more importantly, it's their speed. Japan holds the highest proportion of elderly citizens on the entire planet. As of 2022, nearly 30%.
29.1% to be exact.
Yeah, 29.1% of the total population was 65 or older. If you compare that figure to the United States, where that cohort is closer to 17%, or even Germany, which hovers around 23%,
it's a different world. Japan is dramatically ahead of the curve. And it's the velocity of that transformation that delivered the real socioeconomic shockwave. It only took Japan 24 years for the population aged 65 and older to double from 7% to 14% of the total. 24 years.
And that speed is the critical variable that distinguishes Japan's experience. To put that in context for you listening, that exact demographic shift took France 115 years to achieve.
115 years.
Over a century. And it took Italy 61 years. So Japan is aging nearly 5 times faster than France did. This rapid acceleration created a massive shockwave, and it fundamentally prevented national institutions, pension funds, the national healthcare systems, everything from adapting gracefully.
They just couldn't keep up.
They couldn't. These systems were designed during the post-war boom, when the population was young and expanding rapidly. They simply did not have the decades needed to gradually refund themselves and redesign their structures as the demographic base inverted itself.
So the consequence of this accelerated aging is this relentless, guaranteed contraction. The total population peaked back in 2008 at around 128 million. Now it's projected to shrink by a staggering 16%, down to 107 million by 2040.
And the long-term projections are even more severe. I mean, while predicting the year 2100 is always speculative, some analyses suggest the total population could potentially shrink below 65 million people.
That's less than half.
A decrease of more than half from the peak. And this creates the structural imbalance we call the inverted population pyramid.
Can you explain that imbalance in a way that feels tangible? What does an inverted pyramid actually mean for the average working age person?
It means the shrinking base of the working age population is being forced to support an increasingly bulging older demographic. We quantify this strain using the age dependency ratio, which measures the ratio of dependents, so those under 15 or over 65, against the working age population.
Okay.
In 2014, the ratio was 40%, meaning roughly 2.5 workers supported 1 dependent. By 2060, that ratio is expected to nearly double, hitting almost 80%.
Yeah, 80%.
Imagine a household where you suddenly go from having 2 adults contributing to the expenses of 1 dependent to having roughly 1 working adult supporting 1 full dependent. That's the scale of pressure being placed on generational equity, national productivity, and social services.
And you see the physical and commercial manifestations of this pressure everywhere. The poignant milestone was reached back in 2014 when sales of adult diapers officially surpassed sales of baby diapers for the first time in Japanese history.
And the physical landscape is transforming in direct response to that demographic reality. Every single year, about 400 primary and secondary schools are forced to close their doors simply because there are no children left in those districts.
Wow.
And this isn't just about losing structures. Many of those closing buildings are immediately repurposed. They're converted into care centers, specialized housing, or community hubs for the elderly. A rapid, literal repurposing of structures designed for the future in facilities needed for the past.
Now, longevity is certainly a factor here. Japanese women live on average to be 88.5, men to about 81.7. But that's really a testament to the quality of life. The primary driver of the population decline is sustained low fertility.
Right.
The total fertility rate, which is the average number of children a woman will have, has been below the replacement level of 2.1 since 1974.
And that sustained low fertility rate is rooted in a deeply complex blend of economic precariousness and cultural resistance. The low fertility is tightly linked to instability among young people, especially men, in the labor market. A staggering 40% of the entire labor force now consists of non-regular employees.
So a part-time, temporary contract worker.
Directly. And these non-regular employees earn dramatically less, right?
Yeah, on average, they earn about 53% less than regular permanent employees.
Yeah.
This financial precarity makes young men in this category feel totally incapable of meeting the traditional societal expectation of supporting a family.
So they're less likely to even consider marriage.
Far less likely. Their identity as a provider is just compromised by these huge structural economic changes. Then you compound that financial pressure with the notorious culture of karoshi,
Death by overwork.
and these deeply entrenched conservative gender roles that have resisted modernization.
This is a huge factor. Women frequently cite the heavy burden of unpaid labor housework, childcare, and especially nursing care for their elderly parents as major reasons for foregoing marriage and parenthood. The traditional expectation basically forces women to choose
A career or
a dedicated, demanding career or having children. It's a choice many are increasingly unwilling to make in modern society, and it acts as a massive disincentive against starting a family.
So if you look at the data for young men, the primary hurdles were financial and job instability. They feel they can't meet that traditional expectation of being the sole or primary breadwinner. This fuels what they call the opt-out phenomenon, a sociological trend where young adults are explicitly rejecting marriage, parenthood, and even relationships altogether.
And if you look at the statistics around physical intimacy, the scale of this withdrawal becomes even clearer. In 2015, a quarter of both women and men aged 18 to 39 reported having no heterosexual sexual experience whatsoever.
A quarter.
A quarter. And this rate has dramatically increased since the 1990s, indicating a profound withdrawal not just from traditional marriage, but from the entire societal mechanism of forming intimate relationships.
And the economic line connecting that withdrawal is it's stark. The research shows that men with stable jobs and high incomes were significantly more likely to have relationships and engage in sexual activity.
Right.
Conversely, low-income men were found to be dramatically more likely to have no sexual experience at all. Being unemployed as a man increased your chances of being a virgin by a factor of 8 compared to those with stable jobs. It just powerfully reinforces the financial dimension that underpins relationship formation in this rigid cultural context.
So Japan is shrinking due to this toxic intersection of economic instability, cultural fatigue, and demographic reality. And yet, the chaos predicted in the 1990s, the lost decade narrative that eventually stretched into 3 lost decades of flatline GDP growth that never led to a full-on societal collapse.
And this is the ultimate paradox, the zen of zero growth. They have survived on flatline GDP growth, an annualized rate of 0.1% in the last quarter of 2022, utterly defying the Western grow or die dogma for 30 years. And yet, they still have incredibly high living standards, low unemployment at around 3%, reliable universal health care, and hyper-efficient infrastructure and public safety.
This stability without breakneck expansion is what led the thinker Kohei Saito, author of Capital and the Anthropocene, to argue that this degrowth trajectory is actually where a healthy, sustainable society should be headed.
Right.
He cites the mounting climate crisis and the spiritual exhaustion caused by hyper-consumption in the West. He asserts that GDP is just a poor measure of a nation's true well-being and happiness.
That's a really compelling argument. There are foundational assets, safety, public transit, incredibly long lifespans, quality food. None of that is adequately reflected in GDP metrics. They've managed to decouple quality of life from the frantic need for quarterly economic expansion, prioritizing different values entirely.
And despite a staggering level of public debt, which is currently sitting at 246% of GDP, Japan maintains significant financial resilience.
Which is astounding.
Conventional wisdom says debt at that level should trigger a collapse, massive interest rate hikes, inflation spirals, currency devaluation, but that hasn't happened.
So why are they immune to the rules of sovereign debt that cripple other nations? This is the technical part we need to elaborate on. Why is Japan's debt safe?
There are 2 main reasons. First, nearly all of Japan's debt is denominated in Japanese yen. They owe the money in the currency they control, which means they can't be held hostage by foreign creditors or currency volatility in the same way, say, Greece was.
Okay, that's key. And the second?
Second, and crucially, the debt is overwhelmingly held domestically by Japanese institutions, banks, and the Bank of Japan itself. Less than 10% is held by foreign entities.
So they essentially owe the money to themselves. That's the key structural difference from most indebted nations.
Exactly. This allows for what is sometimes called the infinite money glitch on a national scale. Only about half of the national debt is held by private banks and citizens. The other half is held as assets by public institutions, primarily the Government Pension Investment Fund, or GPIF.
Which is one of the largest pools of capital in the world.
It is. That and the Bank of Japan.
So let's break down that glitch. They are printing debt, but it's not causing the crisis that everyone expects.
Well, think of it this way. The government issues bonds, which is debt, that have very low interest rates, typically less than 1%. So the debt is serviced at this very low cost. Simultaneously, public institutions like the GPIF, which holds this debt, are also huge investors in foreign stocks, infrastructure, and other diversified assets globally. The GPIF consistently earns a return of 4% to 5% on its portfolio.
So the government pays out 1% interest to itself or its domestic holders, and those holders, like the GPIF, are earning 4 or 5 times that amount on their assets. It's a mechanism that structurally generates more value than the interest costs.
Which prevents a collapse. It creates a self-sustaining fiscal loop. They are recycling capital internally, which allows them to avoid external debt crises. They manage to keep inflation lower than almost any other G7 nation by sacrificing wages and productivity growth. But the trade-off is huge.
What's the trade-off?
Near non-existent price gouging. And most critically, they have successfully avoided the housing crises plaguing places like London, Sydney, and Vancouver. The stability is real.
So the successful management of degrowth, this economic stability, is what enables the next pillar of their strategy, the radical choice. Because they aren't facing an immediate economic collapse, they have the freedom to prioritize something other than GDP.
Social cohesion.
Exactly.
Their demographic cliff demanded a response, and their response was a definitive rejection of the Western prescription for demographic decline, which is mass immigration. They are not saying no to all foreign workers, but they are saying no to the volume and speed that would fundamentally alter the social fabric.
This is the deliberate audit we discussed. Automation versus immigration. The 2025 policy recalibration, which specifically lowers quotas for certain foreign worker sectors like logistics and retail, while explicitly doubling down on digital infrastructure and automation subsidies. That's a policy statement.
It is a profound declaration. The explicit reasoning, as articulated by the consultant you met, is preserving the integrity of the social contract and avoiding the social fragmentations seen in multicultural megacities.
Right.
The 1.23 million limit on foreign workers is the government declaring that maintaining a high-trust society is a higher priority than economic expansion at any cost.
It's a choice to accept the graceful decay, a deliberate, managed contraction prioritizing tranquility and social harmony over the frenetic, labor-dependent growth model.
They're willing to pay the price.
They are. They are willing to pay the economic cost of degrowth to preserve cultural continuity. They choose to age in silence rather than thrive in chaos.
And the payoff of this choice is the unparalleled social cohesion and safety, the high-trust dividend. Japan's low crime rate is truly an anomaly that challenges the assumptions of socioeconomic determinism. The national murder rate stands at 0.2 murders per 100,000 people,
which is the lowest in the entire OECD, 30 times fewer than the rate in the United States.
It's incredible.
And what's particularly insightful is the historical trend. Japan's murder rate has been in a stable, continuous decline since the post-WWII era, and crucially, this decline seems totally unresponsive to macroeconomic changes. Fluctuations in poverty, unemployment, or income inequality don't seem to correlate with increases in violent crime.
Which suggests that the strong link between socioeconomic hardship and organized violence, which is a defining feature of the US and parts of Europe, is structurally severed in Japan.
You can see that so vividly when you compare U.S. cities with Tokyo and Osaka.
You really can.
Let's use that comparison. In the U.S. model, like Boston, violence adheres fiercely to the hotspots theory of crime.
Correct. In cities like Boston, murder is highly geographically concentrated. Only 5% of the street segments absorb the overwhelming majority of the violence. And these hotspots cluster precisely in areas disproportionately affected by entrenched inequality.
And the perpetrators are often part of these cohesive, repetitive criminal groups, like gangs.
Right, which account for nearly half the city's murders. This is structural crime linked to structural inequality.
But the Japanese model is fundamentally different.
Completely different. In Osaka and Tokyo, crime, including murder, is spread much more evenly across the entire geographic landscape. It's demonstrably disconnected from socioeconomic disparities. You can consider Osaka's poorest district, Nishinari, which has the city's lowest income and highest unemployment.
You'd expect it to be a hotspot.
You would, but it still maintains a relatively low murder rate, statistically similar to the wealthy central commercial districts. The poverty is present, but the violence isn't concentrated there.
And the systemic difference in perpetrators is even more striking. Recidivism in murder is near non-existent in Japan, less than 0.3%. Almost every murder, when solved, is attributed to a different individual.
Which suggests a systemic lack of cohesive, repetitive criminal groups linked to homicide. The friction is individualized, not structural. And this leads us to the crucial structural difference in law enforcement, the Koban system.
Ah, yes.
Tokyo alone has 1,183 Koban police boxes. These small, locally staffed stations located every few blocks, geographically saturating the entire metropolitan area.
I find the efficiency argument fascinating. Tokyo achieves its low murder rate with 62% less total police force per capita than New York City.
And NYC spends 14% more per resident on policing.
So how does the Koban system achieve this cost-effective prevention?
It's preventative relational policing, not reactive militarization. The officers often live with their families near the Koban. They conduct detailed, localized neighborhood censuses, which is essentially soft intelligence gathering. They handle minor disputes, they give directions, help people find lost items, they know the rhythm of their block. They are trading expensive, reactive SWAT-style policing for cost-effective, continuous community integration.
And that deep integration also dramatically reduces the potential for state violence.
Oh, absolutely. Killings by public servants are almost non-existent. Only 7 were reported in 2018.
So the pervasive presence of the Koban structurally addresses the root issue we see in U.S. crime data, that geographically demarcated inequality. By saturating all neighborhoods equally with resources and continuous monitoring, they avoid creating those pockets of concentrated abandonment and despair that breed gang activity and organized crime.
Precisely. The societal order is maintained not just by law, but by mutual monitoring and fear of exclusion, often referred to as shame culture. People fear disturbing conformity and causing trouble to others.
The waku concept.
Exactly. People often saying, "I am sorry," instead of "thank you" when someone helps them, acknowledging the social bother.
But wait, let me push back on that. Isn't reliance on shame culture and mutual monitoring ultimately unsustainable, especially as younger generations become more mobile and communities disperse? And isn't it dependent on that very high degree of homogeneity the consultant mentioned?
It absolutely relies on cultural boundaries.
Yeah.
The data highlights rising visitor crime, petty theft, fraud, and disorderly conduct concentrated in tourist districts.
Mm-hmm.
This underscores that the high-trust ecosystem operates within a boundary of homogeneity and shared cultural understanding. When you introduce non-participants who don't share the same level of fear of exclusion or the same code of conduct, the system begins to crack in those specific boundary areas.
This leads us back to a fascinating sociological paradox when we discuss trust itself. Japan, despite being profoundly safe, actually exhibits lower trust in strangers than the individualistic United States. How is that possible?
Because the trust is highly parochial. It's focused on the in-group. Your immediate family, your neighbors, your known network, your company.
Not on the stranger you meet on the street.
It's exactly. Sociological theories suggest this is rooted in Japan's relatively low social mobility. People rely on known networks and actively avoid open market transactions with outsiders to minimize the transaction costs and risk of being cheated. They essentially pay an opportunity cost by avoiding the wider market, but they ensure safety within their known circle.
Whereas Americans, due to high mobility, are constantly forced into novel social and economic interactions with strangers just to function. They have to develop skills in quickly reading character cues to engage in unembedded exchanges, forcing them to develop a broader, if shallower, trust in strangers.
That's the core difference. Japan is structurally trading market efficiency and mobility for heightened social safety. They prioritize low friction within a homogeneous system. But this profound social trust and ultimate order comes at a significant human cost of isolation and an unforgiving system.
And this is where the narrative shifts from policy success to profound social tragedy. We've detailed the safety dividend, but we have to address the cost. Isn't this low mobility, high trust system actually creating the perfect conditions for isolation and ultimately the karokushi tragedy?
It is the dark side of the system's reliance on conformity and minimal bother. The system is incredibly punitive toward those who cross the line, or, more tragically, those who become isolated and fall outside the network of mutual monitoring.
We see that in the rising crime rate among the elderly.
Yes, often for minor crimes like shoplifting. While the total number of inmates is decreasing, the number of elderly inmates is rising dramatically. Over 13% of new inmates are now over 65, many suffering from dementia.
And the heartbreaking reality is that for some, prison actually serves as a social safety net.
It is a profound indictment of social isolation. Some elderly people are found to reoffend specifically to return to prison because they feel they have no place for them outside the wall. They view prison as the only place where they don't have to bother others, where their meals are provided, and where they have a minimal structured social interaction. Their desire to minimize bother to society is so ingrained that they choose incarceration over the anxiety of isolated freedom.
And the most profound human manifestation of this deep social isolation is karokushi, or solitary death.
Karokushi refers to the phenomenon where thousands of isolated elderly people die unnoticed, sometimes for weeks or even months. It is the ultimate marker of social breakdown within a system obsessed with superficial order.
The numbers are shocking.
In the first half of 2024 alone, nearly 4,000 bodies of people living alone were discovered a month or more after their death, overwhelmingly among the elderly. This is what happens when the emphasis on not inconveniencing others overrides the necessity of communal care. It is the cost of prioritizing ultimate order over social vitality.
So this relentless internal focus managing degrowth, protecting the social contract, even at high human cost, brings us to the solution Japan is deploying to solve its labor crisis. Technology rooted in deep cultural values. This is the integration of the shokunin ethos into the digital age.
Right. The shokunin ethos provides the necessary philosophical foundation for embracing high-tech automation. Shokunin is much more than just the word for artisan or craftsman. It is a profound, almost spiritual philosophy centered on a deep devotion to a craft, the unrelenting pursuit of perfection, and absolute attention to detail.
The fundamental belief that nothing is too small to be perfected.
Exactly.
You can trace the historical significance of this ethos back to the 17th century Tokugawa shogunate. In that rigid Neo-Confucian social hierarchy, artisans were ranked third, above merchants.
Which is a huge deal. That ranking reflects a core societal value. Producing tangible, high-quality goods craftsmanship was valued more than merely trading existing items for profit.
And the way this knowledge is transmitted is critical. It happens through intensive, often decades-long apprenticeship, where knowledge is preserved through practiced physical embodiment, not standardized manuals.
Yeah, you think of a sushi master or a master knife maker. Apprentices might spend months or even years learning seemingly preparatory tasks like how to wash rice with a certain motion, or squeeze towels to a perfect moisture level before they're ever allowed to touch the actual craft materials.
It instills absolute precision and respect for the process. So if shokunin is the individual's spiritual devotion to perfection, then monozukuri is its industrial extension.
Precisely. Monozukuri literally translates to making things. It is the industrial scale application of the shokunin ethos. The relentless emphasis on Kaizen.
Continuous incremental improvement.
Right. And a zero-defect mentality, stringent quality control that defined Japanese manufacturing, particularly the rise of the Toyota production system. It's the cultural underpinning that gave Japanese manufacturing its global reputation for quality.
And this is where the strategic link to robotics becomes incredibly powerful and deeply cultural, not just economic. The choice to integrate advanced technology is seen as a natural extension of the shokunin spirit. A commitment to mechanical perfection in the face of human fallibility.
The logic is clear and uncompromising. If the cultural commitment demands perfection, a zero-defect rate, and a human cannot achieve that zero-defect rate 100% of the time, then the cultural commitment demands a machine designed with flawless precision must take over that task.
So automation isn't a necessary evil.
No, it is the ultimate expression of the pursuit of perfection.
So technology isn't just a labor-saving measure, it's a cultural preservative. By solving the demographic challenge internally through technological muscle rather than mass immigration, they maintain both efficiency and the high degree of homogeneity required for their social contract. It's the ultimate internal optimization strategy.
And this strategy is fully expressed in the Government Society 5.0 initiative, the concept for a super smart society. This is a national concept aimed at enhancing economic productivity and citizen well-being by fusing cyberspace and physical space through AI.
Including technologies for enhancing human capabilities and next-generation manufacturing systems.
It's a national vision for a post-human, post-growth economy.
And we are seeing this technology rapidly deployed in key labor shortage sectors, with Japan building a digital moat by engineering its own technological successors. Let's look at specific visual examples. In logistics and retail, how are autonomous systems prioritizing wa or harmony in the workplace?
Wa or harmony in a workplace means reducing friction, exhaustion, and conflict. So autonomous vehicles and AI-driven warehouses are filling labor gaps by taking over the most physically demanding, repetitive, and time-consuming tasks. The goal is not to replace all humans, but to automate the tasks that lead to high turnover or worker burnout, thus preserving the why for the remaining human staff.
The convenience store, the konbini, is a quintessential part of Japanese life, and it's become a testbed for these changes.
Absolutely. Retail is transforming with seamless, cashierless checkout systems like Touch to Go, which uses overhead cameras and shelf sensors. When you grab an item, the system instantly recognizes it. When you exit, the screen displays your total, and payment is completed almost invisibly via a credit card or IC transportation card.
Which massively reduces staff interaction, minimizes the need for cashiers, and speeds up throughput.
And the robots are moving into the service sector to handle specific, arduous tasks. The TX Scara robotic arm, developed by Telexistence, autonomously restocks refrigerated shelves with bottles and cans at Family Mart.
And that is a perfect example of applied monozukuri. That task stocking cold shelves, often repetitively during the night shift, is physically demanding and profoundly undesirable.
Exactly. By automating it, the TX Scara operates 247, tirelessly achieving the perfection of continuous stocking, while freeing human staff for tasks requiring judgment, creativity, and customer service. It solves a specific, nasty labor gap.
We focused on retail, but how is this playing out in the demographic crisis sector itself? Elder care.
Elder care is perhaps the most urgent area. Robots are being deployed to assist in lifting and moving patients, which prevents injuries to the dwindling number of human caregivers. Companion robots, like the Thiel-shaped Paro, are used to provide non-judgmental emotional support, especially in a culture where older people might feel ashamed to ask for constant human attention.
Right.
Society 5.0 also includes projects for wearable technology that monitors vital signs of movement, flagging issues before a human caregiver even notices, thus extending the autonomy and dignity of the elderly person.
And perhaps the most poignant symbolic automation is the preservation of cultural traditions through technology, the Buddhist robots.
This is the ultimate statement. These robotic priests are capable of conducting rituals like funerals. With fewer young people choosing the priesthood, technology steps in to ensure the continuity of cultural and spiritual traditions despite the dwindling human population available to perform these specialized tasks.
Right.
It suggests that technology can serve as the steel shell protecting the traditional soul, ensuring continuity when human numbers fail.
So to reiterate the synthesis of the sources, Japan's strategy is a civilizational Noah's Ark. It's a deliberate, highly sophisticated choice to reject the global race for scale and speed. They are structurally protecting their society from external volatility, as we saw in the stability of their economy, despite flatline growth, and from internal fragmentation, maintaining high social cohesion.
And they have achieved this by ubiquitously embedding safety resources through the Koban system, successfully managing the localization of socioeconomic inequality, and deeply investing in internal, culturally rooted technological solutions based on shokunin and monozukuri. And in doing so, Japan sustains high living standards despite severe demographic headwinds.
The profound lesson here, I think, is that prosperity and stability are not measured solely by traditional GDP growth charts, but perhaps more accurately by the level of social friction and disorder a nation is willing to tolerate.
And Japan has declared its tolerance for friction is near zero.
And it is using technology and contraction to maintain that boundary.
Japan has secured a quiet, deeply safe existence that many high-growth, high-friction nations can only envy. They've proven that survival with high integrity and a high quality of life is possible in a post-growth environment, even if the process is marked by profound individual isolation.
Ultimately, the price of this profound social trust and ultimate order is extreme collective self-discipline, a vigilant defense of cultural boundaries, and the willingness to forego certain forms of hypergrowth. By choosing to contract, Japan has achieved a profound form of preservation, building its future not on an influx of people, but on an upgrade of its own technological and social code, remaining civilization's meticulous and silent fortress.